Very good morning, or good afternoon, I should say now, and a warm welcome to the second day of competition at the Millstreet International Horse Trials for the FEI Eventing Nations Cup competition, the second leg of the series to take place this year. Montelibretti, of course, held in March. That was a leg won by the French team. And then Chatsworth sadly abandoned a few weeks ago due to the great British weather. But we've got a nice sunny day, bit of a breeze in Millstreet today as we look to welcome the next 21 combinations forward for this, the first phase. And we'll be with you live throughout the weekend, of course, as well. Tomorrow, the jumping takes place from 2 o'clock local time in the main arena here. And we do hope that you will join us for that, as well as the cross country on Sunday morning. And we'll have live commentary from the on-site team for the cross-country phase. So what happened yesterday? Well, we had some 39 combinations trot down the centre line to our ground jury of President for Great Britain, Judy Hancock, Marie Hennessy for Ireland, and John Little also for Ireland. And it is Australia out in front. Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca, one of the final horses to go in the Nations Cup. Team riders at 29.0, the only combination to break that 30 barrier. And actually that spearheaded the Australian campaign to the top of the team standings as well. We'll come on to that in just a second. In the individual competition, Stephen Heel, British team member with Kadam Deluxe, 30.7, sits in second. Alyssa Phillips for the USA and Oscar, winners at the level already this year, currently sitting in third. Then comes the Kiwi contingent. Janelle Price, McLaren in fourth. Tim Price, Chio 20 in fifth. Clark Johnstone, Rocketman sixth. Dan Jocelyn, Blackthorn Cruz in seventh. Ellie Fredericks and Pure Trendsetter, one of the last to go yesterday. 34.2 are the best of those individual riders competing alongside the team riders as well. Bill Levitt, Sligo Candy Cane in 9th, and Patricia Ryan, the Caped Crusader, in 10th for Ireland, the only Irish flag in a top 10 that at the moment is dominated by the New Zealand and Australian team riders, it should be said. In terms of that Nations Cup competition, 5 teams lining up this weekend. Australia out in front, 99.4, but they are only fielding 3 riders because unfortunately Sammy Birch, their 4th selected rider, not able to compete. So 99.4, not even a second in front of New Zealand in the silver medal position at the moment, 99.7. United States of America, 103.2 in third. Great Britain in fourth, 105.0. And Ireland, 107.4. But just 2 fences in the show jumping separate the top 5 teams, or the 5 teams on the leaderboard. So we have no doubt that is going to be all change over the next few days. The team competition is put to one side for now because we'll see them again in the show jumping tomorrow. We now focus our attentions on the final 21 riders to come forward as individuals in this 4-star short presented by Connolly's Red Mills. And we've got a whole host of big names as well. Ian Cassels will get us started for the home side, but Kevin McNabb, 2 rides for him for Australia. Joseph Murphy, Calaro, surely one of Ireland's biggest hopes in this 4-star class. He'll be about midway through the first session. The likes of Christopher Burton, Felix Etzel for Germany, and Tim Price and Clark Johnstone, one of the last to go as well. So we turn our attentions to Ian Cassell, Chambo Superflex, who will be the first to do their test this afternoon. And we would just say, echo the thoughts that we mentioned on the coverage yesterday. Of course, everybody at FEI.tv's thoughts are with Jessie Campbell and the whole of the Campbell and Strang families. And the eventing family in Millstreet this weekend really pulling together. And if you're watching the coverage with us, then we hope that we can help you pull together as well, because there has been an enormous ripple of grief throughout the eventing community after last weekend. Lots of support available. If you feel to take advantage of it, please do so. Eventing Nation have got some great resources. Just go and take a look. But we will focus for now on the task in hand. Ian Cassell, Chambo Superflex, as I say, the first to get us underway. The third of 4 rides for Ian. He had 2 tests yesterday as well. The highest of those, Millridge Athos in 11th at the moment, 35.2. And Millridge Atlantis in 24th, 36.3. Chambo Superflex is a really, really smart young horse that actually Ian thinks a massive amount of. Has had some good results at the 4-star level. Clear cross country at Blenheim in the 8 and 9-year-old class last year. Was actually 13th in this class 12 months ago as well. Very much at the early part of her career there. Had only had 1 previous run at the level. So comes back 12 months later, much more experienced. And just a 10-year-old. By Flexibil, bred by the Chambo stud, owned now by Francis Corkery. Bit of a mixed impression from our judges of that first flying change, 446.5. Let's see how the second one goes. It was a stride or so later than I think Ian would have perhaps intended, but it was clean. And these flying changes in this brand new C test that these 4-star competitors are doing are both worth double marks. So it was so nearly an immaculately square halt. 5 steps in the rein back are required, not quite. Ian, really busy weekend for him. As we said, 4 horses in the 4-star. Also comes forward with Kelly's Quality, arguably his most experienced rider, is the penultimate horse to go at around 2:30 local time this afternoon. Tiniest bit of anticipation just before that trot transition, but that trot transition came off very well for them. It was an influential part of this test yesterday. Mid-30s at the moment. There's a real bit of congestion on the leaderboard around that sort of 36 territory, from sort of 35.2 is 11th, and then the next 2 penalties cover the next 15 places on the leaderboard, so every single penalty counts. At this point, every single mark makes a massive difference. Chambo Superflex scored 31 in the first phase here 12 months ago. I wouldn't say we're seeing really low numbers in the dressage this year. Bit of tension creeping in, unfortunately breaking into the canter not once but twice. I think he might have just contained it into the same movement, and will get separately marked for the Holt Ability Salute, and that is a real shame, because actually that will bring his score down. He'd just picked up some really nice 8s for his circle left on the 20 metres, the stretchy circle as we've dubbed it. And unfortunately, 4-4-3 for that movement turning left onto the centre line. However, 7s across the board for the Holt Ability Salute and Harmony of Athlete and Horse, which again is a double mark. So provisional score of 34.8 That's actually going to be good enough to put him just inside the top 10 as well. Goes into 10th place. Ian Cassels and Chambo Superflex. I think he was pretty pleased with that. Still a relatively young mare, only a 10-year-old. So lots to look forward to over the next couple of days for them. Next it will be the first of 2 rides for Australia's Kevin McNabb. Kevin, who was part of the Australian team that won a team silver at the Tokyo Olympic Games. Memory serves, he was actually the travelling reserve and got called into the squad just before the competition started after teammate Stuart Tinney unfortunately had to withdraw. But he absolutely delivered, and he would very much fancy his chances for another trip to the Olympic Games as Paris is quickly on the horizon. Comes forward with Faro Imp. This horse stepping up to the level for the first time. Just an 8-year-old, actually went to Le Lion d'Angers for the Young Horse World Championships in France at the end of last year. Jumped clear cross-country there, has an immaculate cross-country record. And actually won the Young Horse 2-star here back in 2022. So has enjoyed success at the venue previously. An 8-year-old, as I say, by F1 USA. Master Imp on the dam line, owned by Emma McNabb, Kevin's wife, alongside Sophia von Moltke. So the extended canter coming back to the collected canter, and then obviously the counter canter around the corner, and does get that flying change. Actually just a slight moment of hesitation, but there's not a lot of time from that extended canter, the counter canter, then as you straighten up onto the short end of the arena, you've only got a couple of strides to actually make sure that you're straight and ready for that change. And particularly for some of the younger horses, that's where it can be the intensity that catches them out. This horse actually dealt with it very well. Unfortunately, the second of those changes not quite as correct. Actually, the first change 554 from our judges, so that's just really had an effect on his score. And you see the second of those changes as well, just having a little bit of a moment in the immobility. Kevin actually just taking a second to say no, we do just need to halt here. 2 to 3 seconds is what is outlined in the test, and let me tell you, 2 to 3 seconds in the middle of a dressage arena feels very different to 2 to 3 seconds in normal time. But actually, Kevin using this very much about building this horse's experience for the future. Lovely positioning in the half pass. Slight bobble at the start of that extended trot. Kevin got it back very quickly. The extended trot and the trot it into and out of the extended trot is one movement, and then the transitions to and the transition from the extended trot worth another mark altogether. And Kevin, after that slight bobble at the beginning, didn't throw the kitchen sink at the extended trot. He was quite careful, and fairly so. He's still only a young horse, remember, probably the youngest horse in the field. In fact, I don't think there's many 8-year-olds in the lineup this weekend. So it's about giving the horse a really good experience. And actually, there's some really nice marks in here. Plenty of 8s, particularly in the trot work. Just unfortunately, those flying changes. And to be fair, the halt probably proving pretty costly. Kevin we'll see a little bit later on with Scuderia 1918, a best friend as well. And slightly more immobility in the final halt. Kevin McNabb and Faro Imp finished their test for Australia. So if you are just tuning in, then a very warm welcome to you. The first 2 combinations of our second day of dressage have completed their test. To our ground jury, Judy Hancock for Great Britain, Marie Hennessy and John Little for Ireland, Marie Hennessy at M, John Little at E. 34.6 for Kevin McNabb. That's a pretty respectable score, and I think Kevin will be very excited about where that score could go in the future as well, given that there were a couple of costly mistakes in there. So very much one to look out for. Still good enough to see him go into 9th place, 34.6. Next to come forwards, it is Andrew Downs for Great Britain. Andrew comes forward with Ringfort Rêve du Moulin. This horse owned by Jane Moss, a 9-year-old by Glasgow Van Merrill's Nest. It's bred by Dan Harron Eakin. Jane Moss, a big supporter of Andrew's over the years. Big supporter of eventing as well. And Andrew also wearing the purple and white ribbon pinned to his jacket in memory, of course, of Georgie Campbell. So many of the riders in Millstreet this weekend proudly wearing their ribbon in memory of a friend, a colleague, an exceptionally talented horsewoman. And after what has been a really tough week for the eventing community, the eventing family in Millstreet have really pulled together. And we hope if you are tuning into the live stream with us this weekend that we can pull together also. So this new 4-star C test, actually, this could be the first time that lots of people are seeing this test. It's come into use in 2024. And actually the canter work comes up pretty quickly at the beginning of the test. Then you go on to the walk and the majority of the trot work at the end of the test. So a little bit different to some of the tests that we've seen previously. Gets the flying change. Could have been straighter, but actually it was clean. And as we've said, you know, there's not a lot of space to get straight there. If you're going across the diagonal, you feel like you have a little bit more room, a little bit more space around you. Andrew goes for it in the extended canter. Used a little bit of ringcraftship, however you'd like to refer to it as, coming round for that second flying change actually, because he winged round the corner slightly He didn't go right into it. He protected the canter, and it meant that the change was not quite straight, but actually the change happened. He kept the canter, and sometimes you have to work out what you're willing to gamble. For the really, really big marks, we'll see people really come back to the collected counter canter, go deep into the corner, straighten up on the short side, a couple of 3 strides probably, and then the flying change over the centre line. But actually, half of producing a good dressage test is knowing how much you can ask for. And Andrew did a very good job there in knowing what he could ask for and actually making that happen. It's a shame that actually this test hasn't picked up a few slightly bigger marks, because bar the second of those flying changes, where there was a slight difference of opinion between the judges, a 4, a 5.5 and a 6, actually he's not done a huge amount wrong. He's just not strayed too far from the 6.5, hence the average of 35 essentially. If you scored a 6.5 for every movement from every judge, that would be a penalty score of 35. Beautifully turned out, Ringfort Rev de Moulin, and a huge credit must go to all of those support staff, the grooms, the teams, both on the ground in Millstreet and those holding the fort at home, because these horses want for absolutely nothing. And beautifully turned out, this horse looking in tip-top condition. Andrew Downs looked pretty pleased with that, and actually that's going to see him go well into the top 10, I think. Depending on those scores that come in. 7th, 33.8, actually separates the Kiwi contingent. Clark Johnston stays 6th, Dan Jocelyn moves down into 8th, 33.8, good enough for Andrew to become the best of those individual combinations. So next to come forwards, it is Feroza Nieuwmoed, Feroza Nieuwmoed. Feroza actually been based over on British soil for a number of years. Been based with Angela Tucker, I believe. And this time, 12 months ago, Feroza Nieuwmoed actually led the Japanese team here for a podium finish in the 3-star long format. It was the Olympic Group G qualifier in that 3-star long format. Australia, Japan, China all battling it out for team tickets. Australia won the team competition that day. But actually, it was China that took the second qualifying ticket, Japan missing out. Then, as events unfolded later on in the year, a failed drugs test for one of the Chinese horses meant that that ticket went to Japan. So, Japan now fielding a team in Paris. It's not the way that they would have wanted to have got a team ticket. I have absolutely no doubt about that. But they will be taking every advantage of it. They've got a really competitive team of riders, and they've got some serious horsepower behind them as well. And this would be one of the most experienced horses in their string, Was top 10 at Blair Castle in the 4-star long format last year. Has been top 15 at Poe a couple of years ago. Numerous placings at the short format 4-star level. And again, as we start to look at, you know, what teams are going to be picked, those team selections are going to be picked over the coming weeks. There we get a really good example of using that corner before the flying change. Unfortunately, the flying change didn't quite come off cleanly for him, I don't think. We'll defer to the judge's expert opinion. And the judges didn't mind it at all. 6, 7, 6.5. See how he does the second of these. You can see him just really making use of the entire arena. And that one was definitely a little bit short behind. Ryuzu was the reserve, the substitute at the Olympic Games in Tokyo, his home Olympic Games, and so many riders have made sacrifices in order to make their dreams happen, but actually Ryuzu, alongside a number of the other Japanese team members, left their homes, their families behind in Japan to come over to Great Britain to train and base themselves in the build-up to that home Olympic Games. And it's wonderful to see that investment in the sport continue even after Tokyo. Moment is looking to be a very nice test. 32.1 would see him go into 4th if he stays around this territory, but if he can creep down a little bit closer towards the 30 mark, he is going to put himself well in contention. Ryuzu actually has also picked up the ride on a really lovely horse called Be My Daisy, that was produced over in Australia by Shane Rose. Picked up a Olympic qualification results actually at Ballindennis in the 4-star long, finished at 8th there. The horse out in Australia had been 4th at Adelaide in the 5-star with Shane, won at the 4-star long level as well. So he's got real options and strength and depth in his string. So Ryuzu Kitajima and Feroza Nieuwmoed come to the end of their test, and that is going to be good enough to put them into 4th place, I think, on the leaderboard. We'll confirm their score in just a second. But actually, all to play for them here this weekend. And it's wonderful to see so many different nations represented throughout this 4-star Short Nations Cup presented by Connolly's Red Mills. Just the 5 teams in the Nations Cup, but also the likes of Japan, Brazil, Germany and France in the lineup. Very uphill way of going, this horse. You can tell established in his training as well. And it sounds like 31.6 for Ryuzu Kitajima. horse owned by Riding Club Crane, and they go into 4th on the leaderboard. Next, we turn to one of our US combinations, Alexa Gartenberg and Cooley Kildaire. Alexa, who's been based with Kevin McNabb, actually made the trip over here, I think, last season. Again, we talk about, you know, sacrifice. Alexa very much leaving behind her friends and family in the US to come over and be based here in England. And with that, the opportunity to compete at venues such as Millstreet. And Cooley Kildaire, Cooley, of course, the prefix of Cooley Farm horses of Richard and Georgina Sheen. This horse would have been sourced in Ireland. In Kildaire, the name might suggest. Beautifully turned out. Up some nice scores at the early part of their test, actually. The best of the US horses so far is Alyssa Phillips and Oscar in 3rd on 30.8. But Alexa currently trending in a top 10 position at the moment. Unfortunately, that flying change won't help her score. Alexa actually grew up in a non-horsey family over in the USA, and I always think it's really inspirational to see riders coming up to the top level. Just took that flying change a bit earlier than she would have planned to. These riders coming up to the top level, having not necessarily come from an inverted commas traditional horsey background. Janelle Price would be another who, you know, very much at the top of her game, but actually didn't grow up in a horsey family. Just something within them. Nice halt. Cooley Kildaire was just having a little bit of a look around, and the tension creeping in. Wasn't quite an even rein back. Extended walk. Want to see the frame get longer. Everything wants to stay the same, essentially, but just get longer. So the steps be longer, the frame be longer. Just slight tension again, creeping in the half pass. Just losing the quarters slightly, and actually in trying to keep hold of the tension and not let Cooley Kildaire break into canter. They just lost a bit of impulsion. coming into this stretchy trot circle. Actually really taking the contact forward. You want the quality of the trot, the balance, self-carriage to remain, but for the horse to seek the contact forwards and down. Certainly did that. But actually, something to remember, even at the 4-star level, you've got to get your 20-metre circle the right size and shape. So Alexa Gartenberg and Cooley Kildaire, is an 11-year-old that she owns herself, have completed their test here. The Green Glens Arena here in Millstreet has hosted some incredible shows over the years. Hosted a whole manner of FEI European Championships, both eventing, dressage and show jumping. In particular, I think they first hosted the Junior European Championships in jumping back in 1980. Did the ponies the following year as well. And the most recent time that the European Championships were here with the young riders and juniors back in 2017. But they've also hosted some iconic events such as the 1993 Eurovision Song Contest, World Boxing, Disney on Ice, you name it. Everything has been here at Millstreet. But they're a massive part of the community. The Duggan family have made this venue very much a focus point in the local community. And actually, when Ukraine were invaded by Russia, they housed, I think, some 400 displaced Ukrainians who came over to Ireland, and the Duggan family very much opened their doors. That's the kind of community hub that it really is. Now, this is one of Ireland's most highly rated horses, second only to Austin O'Connor's Colorado Blue. It is Calaro, ridden by Joseph Murphy. This could be a test that we see rattle the very top of the leaderboard. Joseph, who is Ireland's one of Ireland's most esteemed, I was going to call him senior riders. I don't mean that in terms of age, I mean that in terms of experience. He's been at the top level for some 20 years or so now. Has racked up a host of championship appearances. But actually, this horse has been a real focal point for him over the last couple of years. It was originally produced by Laura Collett over in England, but Joseph took on the ride a few years ago and has since been top 10 at Aachen, arguably one of the toughest 4-star shorts in the world, and would very much have eyes set on Paris in a few weeks' time. That's that first change. I think I would be right in saying that Joseph actually represented Ireland at the London Olympic Games. That's correct. Had that wonderful partnership with Electric Cruise. Finished top 15 individually there. Electric Cruise, he also rode at the World Championships, or the World Equestrian Games in 2014. And he's been to 6 senior European championships as well, including Haradapin in France last year on this very horse. They finished 12th individually. The team just missing out on a medal. Finished in 4th place. Good immobility in the halt. Calaro's best test at the 4-star level has been 30.1. That was actually here in Millstreet 12 months ago, when they went on to finish on the podium. Finished in 3rd place. 4th at Ballindennis on their last run out. Would traditionally be early 30s in the first phase. So trending about on track with where they're normally at. He'd be one of the quickest horses in the field as well, and he could well need that speed actually on Sunday. He was one of the fastest of the day here 12 months ago. It was a class that was won by Tim Price and Falco, his World Championship individual bronze medalist. Joseph has worked extraordinarily hard on his own fitness routine. Absolutely leaving no stone unturned. Just perhaps seek that contact forwards a little bit more. Dropping the nose behind the vertical. As Joseph picked up the contact again, the horse just had a slight miscommunication. So Joseph Murphy and Calaro have completed their test. Not going to challenge the very top of the leaderboard. Andrew Barnett, Go Tosca, still the ones to beat 29.0, the only ones to be sub 30 at the moment, but will certainly go inside the top 10 and should just sneak into 5th place, I would imagine. Joseph, ever the perfectionist, would have been, I'm sure, slightly frustrated with a couple of places where he would have felt he leaked a couple of marks there, but still a very respectable score, and it's going to see him well in contention for the rest of the weekend. 32.5 for Joseph Murphy and Calaro, for owners Richard Ames, Tanya Ames, Claire Main, Charlie Main and Annette O'Callaghan. So they go into 5th, push Janelle Price down into 6th. So 6 different nations in the top 6 places at the moment. We've got Australia, Great Britain, the USA, Japan, Ireland and New Zealand in the top 6 in the standings. Joseph, just in the top corner of your screens, would just be checked by the FEI stewards. They always do a tack check at the end of a test just to make sure that everything is as it should be. They make sure that if a horse has an ear bonnet on, they take that off to make sure that there's nothing inside. They'll always put their hands in the horse's mouth as well, check the bit. As next to come forwards, it is the newly crowned badminton champion, Caroline Powell for New Zealand. Caroline comes forward riding Legally Grey. It's a horse that just stepped up to the 4-star level a little bit earlier on this year. Actually went to Kronenberg and Oudkastel. Completed on both occasions, but still looking for their first clear round cross country. Have had some good results at the 3-star level, including 3rd at Ballindennis in the 3-star long at the end of last season. It's a 9-year-old Irish bred by Munther, bred by Declan Daly. Ricardo Z on the dam line, owned by Fiona and Nicholas Lambert. Caroline, another of those riders to be wearing the purple and white ribbon. The New Zealand team will all be, I am absolutely sure, standing together with their great friend and teammate Jessie Campbell. Georgie is much part of Team New Zealand, as she was a part of Team GB. Legally Grey actually really did hold it together in the halt, because actually, even though slight loss of attention in the carriage, feet remained planted in a lovely square halt. Beautifully presented and turned out, as with all of the horses in the field. Gets the change. Caroline did a really good job in presenting the horse to that flying change. Used every inch of the arena. Caroline, who won Burghley back in 2010 with Lenamore, 14 years later, took the badminton title, her second 5-star victory with Greenacre Special Cavalier, and surely with it secures herself a spot on the New Zealand team for the Paris Olympic Games, all being well, of course. This horse that is really capable of a very good first phase score scored 26.9 in the dressage at the 4-star level in Cronenberg. It was quite a low scoring day. We had the likes of Tom McEwen's JL Dublin, who won that day actually on a 20.9, but that's still a very, very respectable score. 32.2 last time out in Oudcastle. Got an 8 from Marie Hennessy at M for that halt. Will be really excited about the type of score that this horse could get, because still pretty inexperienced, this gelding, only a 9-year-old, having stepped up to the level this time, but actually just like miscommunication there, breaking into the canter as they prepared for the shoulder in. But there's some really nice marks in the test. 8s in there is just not quite as consistent as I'm sure Caroline will be hoping for in the future. But lovely paces. Extremely willing. I didn't quite get that final hold, but it would be said that actually when they do all come together in the arena, the halts are going to be a real highlight for this horse. So Caroline Powell and Legally Grey, again, going to break into the top 10, most likely breaking into the top 5 as well. So we've had all change in the top 10 at this part of the day so far. Caroline and Legally Grey looking to I think probably just go in behind Rosu Katajima and ahead of Joseph Murphy and Calaro. And that's confirmed. Into fifth, 32.4, so just 0.1 ahead of Calaro, but take the higher placing. So, I think it's the morning of the Greys. Another that will be beautifully turned out, I am sure. And it will be Georgina Hurling who comes forward with another Cooley horse. This one, Cooley Now or Never. Georgina based over in Great Britain. Cooley Now or Never, Irish-bred 12-year-olds by Ars Vivendi, owned by Georgina herself, and again one that was sourced through Cooley Farm. Combination that are stepping up to the level for the first time. Actually represented Team GB at Montelibretti in the Young Rider European Championships last year. Finished 6th individually. And actually, I have a feeling they were in the individual gold medal position going into the show jumping, when unfortunately had a couple of poles down in the jumping, which just cost them a medal. But they're stepping up to the 4-star. On their first international run of 2024. Unfortunately, very late behind in the first of those changes. Was changed in front and then changed behind some 3 strides or so later. This change coming, and unfortunately late behind again, but Georgina did a really good job in keeping the counter canter going then, because actually for a moment I thought the horse might try and pop the change in early. Quite the 5 steps in the rein back. Into the extended walk, where you want to see that entire frame lengthen. And the intensity of a 4-star test is just up a couple of notches from the 3-star test that this combination would have been doing. The movements that little bit more complicated, but they come more quickly as well. It's all very well being in a collecting ring and being able to nail your flying changes and your lateral movements, but actually the main difficulty of the 4-star test isn't the individual movements necessarily on their own, it's the cumulative effect of them. 3/4 trailing slightly in that half pass. Of course, the two judges on the end of the arena at C&M, that's Judy Hancock and Marie Hennessy, would get the best view of those. So Georgina Hurling and Cooley Now or Never coming to the end of their test. Lovely square halt to finish, and they should end up being sub 40 as well. We'll confirm that score for you when those final collective marks come through. Harmony of athlete and horse also worth a coefficient of 2. And get 6.5, 6.5 and 6 from our judges. So 38.7. And going into 36th place for Georgina Hurling and Cooley Now or Never. Actually, 3 Cooley horses in a row. Cooley Bounce, Cooley Now or Never, Cooley Kildaire in 34th, 35th and 36th place on the leaderboard. As next to come forward, it will be one of the most anticipated combinations in the field here this weekend, because it will be the Australian Olympian Christopher Burton, who comes forward with Shadowman. Chris, who has represented Australia at the very highest level in the sport, was actually individually 5th at the Rio Olympic Games with Santano back in 2016. Was selected for Tokyo, but unfortunately an injury meant that he wasn't able to travel. And after that, he focused his attentions on pure jumping, very much bidding for a place on the Australian team in the pure jumping discipline, but actually has made a comeback in the eventing world as well, and has taken out Elise on Shadowman, who was produced up to the 5-star level by Ben Hobday, but has taken out Elise on the horse for the 2024 season in a bid to be selected for the Australian team and to feature at his 3rd Olympic Games. Also went to London with Holstein Park Leilani. The Australian team took team bronze actually in Rio. Chris very much part of that team. And this horse now has ticked the Olympic qualification box, which was the first question that they needed to answer. Now he needs to really fight for his place on the team. Fellow Australian Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca lead the way at the moment, 29.0. What can Chris Burton deliver on a horse that we know is capable of putting in a good score? He's certainly got some nice marks at the early part of his test. 8.5 from John Little at E for that medium trot. Chris, who for many years known as one of the fastest riders in the world, cross country. Lovely change even. It's amazing. Looked like he had all the time in the world down that short side of the arena for the change, and as we've seen throughout the last couple of days, that change comes up really quickly. Trending well on track to go out in front at the moment. Early days, of course. Wind change perhaps not quite as nice as the first, but still clean. And there is a whole smattering of 8s throughout this test so far. And Chris actually juggling his eventing commitments alongside his jumping commitments at the moment. Was actually out in Rome at Piazza di Siena last week, jumping on the Nations Cup team. Then puts his eventing hat back on. The best test he's had with Shadowman across his 4 internationals would be a 28.2. That was a 3-star, but he has done a 28.4 in Kronenberg as well. Sixth in Stragom at the 4-star long format. It was a class that he actually won on his other ride at Clever Louis. Clever Louis not in Australian ownership, owned by Cheddington Estate. Dr. Geoffrey Guy and his wife Kate have been massive supporters of eventing, and of Chris in particular over the last few years. But as part of the Olympic qualification criteria, a horse must be in at least part ownership of the nation in which they are planning to represent by a certain deadline, and that deadline comes in the January before the Olympic Games in the summer. So Shadowman is his option for the Olympic Games. And so far, he is going to take over the top of the leaderboard. It will be a personal best for the combination. Chris Burton and Shadowman for Australia have laid down the gauntlet. They are going to go out in front of Andrew Bartlett and Go Tosca also for Australia. But it is going to be the score to beat at the moment. We'll wait for those final marks to come through. Chris Burton, who has ridden at some of the biggest events all over the world, bidding for another Olympic spot. He looks pretty happy with that, and so he should. 8.5 for Harmony of Athlete and Horse as their collective mark. 25.1 is his total score, and that will see them out in front. So, interestingly, not quite a pole in hand. 25.1 in first, 29.0 Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca in second. But Chris Burton and Shadowman, our new leaders here in the 4-star Nations Cup class, presented by Connolly's Red Mills at Millstreet International Horse Trials. And Shadowman is the one to beat. They've got a bit of a point to prove this weekend. And certainly, if he's in contention heading out onto the cross-country, we all know Chris Burton can go quick in that phase. Now, we turn our attentions back to Ireland, and it is Lexi Kilfeather with Lord of the Morning, owned by Everina Kilfeather, was actually bred by Kate Jarvie, by Sandro Hitt. 13 years of age now, Lord of the Morning. Combination went to Buccolo in the 4-star long format at the end of last season, completed there. Actually top 15 at Ballindennis, jumped a lovely clear round in the 4-star short format earlier on this season. Actually lined up in this 4-star class 12 months ago, but but unfortunately withdrew before the show jumping. Scored 33.8 in the first phase though. That would very much be one of their best tests at the level. Just like moments of tension. In that transition. Clean change. Unfortunately, that one was late behind and then just dropped back to the trot step as well, which will be unfortunate for their score. Those flying changes have a coefficient of 2, so they're worth essentially double marks. Good immobility in the holds. I've seen lots of people quite giving it the amount of time in that halt to show true immobility to our judges. Easy to see that penalty score plummet when there's been an error, and it drops very quickly, or it rises very quickly, and it's very hard, very slow going to get it to fall back down again. But Lexi doing a really super job here. It's amazing because when we sit and watch from a commentary position or spectating from home, you just can't see actually how much tension is in a horse, and what the rider feels sometimes can be very, very different to what we can see. Trending just outside the top 40 on the leaderboard as things stand at the moment. And into the final halt. So, Lexi Kildaire for Ireland, Lord of the Morning, have completed their test. We'll bring you their score in just a second, but let's remind ourselves of how the leaderboard looks at the moment. Chris Burton, Australia, and Shadowman out in front, 25.1, competing as individuals, not in the Australian Nations Cup team. Andrew Barnett, however, is in the Australian Nations Cup team, and he currently sits in second, 29.0. Kadam Deluxe and Stephen Heel in third, 30.7. Steve, who actually led for a good part of the day yesterday, was just second down the centre line, has held on to that position. Alyssa Phillips and Oscar in fourth, 30.8. Ryuzu Kitajima, Feroza Nieuwmoed 31.6 in 5th. So they're the top 5 as things stand at the moment. Of course, the team riders in the Nations Cup competition, 20 or 19 of them, I should say, because there's 5 teams, and one of them, Australia, fielding just a team of 3 riders. They all did their test at the beginning of the day yesterday, so the team standings will not be affected at all today. Australia lead the team standings at 99.4 ahead of New Zealand, 99.7, the USA 103.2, and Great Britain 105.0, Ireland 107.4. But of course, it's still a long way to go, just 2 fences in the show jumping covering the whole of that leaderboard. That's 20 seconds on the cross country, which across 3 counting scores is not a lot. I'm sure we'll see plenty of movement there as the weekend progresses. Now, the next rider to come forwards before the break, the halfway stage of the second day of dressage, it is Molly Duda. Molly, who was the 2023 Young Rider of the Year over in the USA on the Emerging Athlete Programme as well, comes forward with Disco Traveller. Disco Traveller, 14 years of age, by Donatelli, owned by Molly herself. Actually, over here on that European Development Tour as part of the Emerging Athlete Programme that is put together by US Equestrian, have the support of their chef to keep here in the Nations Cup this weekend, but also emerging athlete and development coach Leslie Law. A real opportunity for these riders to get exposure in Europe, and US Equestrian have used the FEI Nations Cup Series to great effect in doing that as well. One of 6 riders that have come over. Molly based actually on the west coast in California. And this horse was US bred as well. Really good placings over on the west coast. Was second in their 4-star run at the beginning of the year. Actually did enter Bicton last weekend. Lovely square halt. Weren't able to run cross country, but have had the start of a run on British soil, because of course the US athletes had all planned to compete in the Nations Cup at Chatsworth as well, which of course when it was cancelled meant that they had to reschedule their plans. You can hear in the background a helicopter or some sort of aircraft going over the arena. Just have to hope we don't see any tension creep in. Damasco Traveller doesn't look too bothered at this stage. Some nice marks in for that walk, 8.77. Trending 33.6. Trending second best of the US riders actually. Alyssa Phillips and Oscar 30.8. Of balance in that extended trot. like a real highlight for this horse in this test. Just had a little bit more stretch down in the stretchy circle, but really nice up the final centre line. So Molly Duda and Disco Traveller making her debut in Ireland is going to go inside the top 10 after that test. I think she'll be really pleased with that as well. In terms of their recent tests, actually, could be looking at a personal best at the 4-star level. Well, a pretty decent time to do it. That is for certain. And I think Disco Traveller, one of the fastest horses in the field as well for Molly. Previous best was actually 32.0 at Bicton last weekend. So it's not going to quite get close enough to it, but it's still going to be a very respectable score for Molly. And she should just be around the top 10. Might just be on the periphery of it. As we just waiting for a final score to come in. 33.8 for Molly Duda and Disco Traveller. So they go into 12th place on the leaderboard, just outside the top 10. So new leader in that session of dressage, Chris Burton, Shadowman, leading an Australian 1-2 at the top of the leaderboard. 25.1 ahead of Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca, 29.0. Kadam Deluxe, Stephen Hill, 30.7 in third. We've got a short break now, but we'll be back in just under 15 minutes' time. 13:41, Jennifer Coonley and Sammy Davis Jr. will get us back underway for the final session of dressage here at Millstreet International Horse Trials. We'll be back with you.
finished the test in area 2. The next competitor here will be Susan Shackleton. Ferrari, driving recall, good decision. Result for playing cars, driving more than 60 hours, 36.0. is sponsored by Aunty Lan. The next competition, fourth grade, for USA, the Ryan Cockatoo. 55 in Arena 2. So we're in a short break. 30:55 for the first horse in Arena 2. Ready to restart now in Arena 1. This CCIO4 Star Nations Cup. Yes, so kindly sponsored by Cooley Kildaire. First go after the break.
Welcome back to the Dressage here at Millstreet International Horse Trials, as we have just 9 combinations left to come forwards in the first of the 3 phases. The jumping, of course, will be live on FEI.tv for you tomorrow afternoon from 2 o'clock local time. And then on Sunday morning, we will have live cross-country action for you, led by the on-site commentary team. Now, a second ride for Jennifer Coonley comes forward now with Sammy Davis Jr. We saw Jennifer actually with Polly Blue Eyes yesterday. Scored 35.5, sits in 21st place at the moment. Sammy Davis Jr. was actually a horse that was produced by Carl Daniels, Jennifer's partner, up to the top level. Second change, or the first change I should say. Jennifer, just 22 years of age, 23 years of age. Actually was selected for her first senior championship last year with Polly Blue Eyes in Haradapat, unfortunately not able to compete. Has individually 4th and part of the Irish team that won a team bronze at the Young Rider European Championships at Hartbury a couple of years ago. As a former Children on Horses European champion, I think that is, back in 2015. Has done a lot of jumping. Sammy Davis Jr. was actually clear cross country at Buccalo last year, jumped to double clear there. 31.9 on their last international start in Kronenberg. And a fun fact for you, actually, Sammy Davis Jr. was also 4th in the Young Rider European Championships here at Millstreet with Cahill on board, then went on 4 years later, or 5 years later, to be 4th again, this time in Millstreet. .3 trending at the moment, so well in touch with our leaders. Would actually go into 3rd if they can keep up this score throughout the rest of the test. Giving us a real indication of actually just what the scores can be with a clear round in the first phase, because we've had very few mistake-free tests. Well, she's not picking up lots of 7 5s and 8s. She's very consistently around the 7. And that is going to see a very competitive score. So, Jennifer Cooley, Sammy Davis Jr. are going to go into a podium position here. I think we'll just sneak into 3rd. We'll push Stephen Hill, Kadam Deluxe down into 4th, I would imagine. And a really, really good test from this combination. I think it's going to be among one of the horse's best tests at the level as well. Confirm that for you. Previous best was 31.9 actually in Kronenberg earlier on this year, so they're going to improve upon that. And actually 30.4 is that score confirmed. So Sammy Davis Jr, Jennifer Cooley fly the Irish flag onto a podium position. They go 3rd at the moment. Shadowman Chris Burton for Australia lead the way. Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca in 2nd, 29.0. We've just seen Jennifer go into 3rd. Stephen Hill, Kadam Deluxe, pushed down into 4th. Alyssa Phillips, Oscar for the USA in 5th. Next to come forward, it is absolutely one to watch for Germany. One of the favourites on the Echo Ratings Prediction Centre this weekend. TSF Polartanz and Felix Etzel. It's a combination that actually were well in contention at Buccalo last year. Had a couple of rails down on the final day, which cost them a top placing, but ended up in 16th. Won the 4-star short in Stragom last season with an excellent double clear. Numerous placings at the 3-star level and a couple of wins at 4-star level as well. Means they are certainly one of the leading contenders here this weekend. So TSF Polartanz, 13-year-olds, ridden by Felix Etzel. It's a horse that actually was bred in Germany by Ulrika Multer, by Convoy, heraldic on the dam side. Still owned by Ulrika Multer today. Felix always able to really present a beautiful test, and this is probably one of the biggest challenges to Chris Burton's leading score with Shadowman. Felix, who represented Germany at the European Championships in Le Moulin in 2019. Nice change. That was with Bandit 436. Rode as an individual there for his senior championship debut, but has been top 10 at the Le Lion d'Angers Young Horse World Championships on another ride. Imagine they are en route to the German National Championships in Le Moulin in a few weeks' time. Only had the 2 sub-30 scores, remember. So trending to go into 3rd at the moment. Steps in the rein back. Now for the extended walk. Horse actually looking really relaxed and rideable. Lovely overtrack in the extended walk. Real extension of the frame. Not dropping behind the vertical. .877 from our judges. Good positioning in the half past. Fluid. Regular quality trot work. And Felix really going for it in the extended trot. Could well see this score go into second. Not going to challenge Chris Burton at the top of the leaderboard. 25.1 is out of reach, but Andrew Barnett on 29.0. So Felix Etzel still very much in touch with that. Just afford to stretch perhaps a little bit more down in the 20-metre circle, but kept really good balance and self-balance importantly. So Felix Etzel and TSF Polartanz are going to go into a podium position here. Might not quite overhaul Andrew Barnett in second, but TSF Polartanz, the sole German representative in this four-star presented by Connolly's Red Mills, is going to be very, very close. Just waiting for one more score to come in as we see some of the highlights again. Felix, a master of producing a really polished performance. Doesn't give anything away in his test. And I have to admit, the traditionalist in me enjoyed this beautifully plaited tail as well. As always, these horses extraordinarily well turned out. 29.2 into third for Felix Etzel, TSF Polartanz. So the Australian duo remain at the top of the table. Chris Burton riding as an individual with Shadowman 25.1. Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca 29.0. Felix Etzel just slotting into third. Jennifer Coonley, Sammy Davis Jr. pushed down to fourth. Stephen Hill, Kadam Deluxe go fifth. So next to come forwards, it will be a ride for Mike Ryan. Michael Ryan actually comes forward with his second ride in this class. Claraa Mountain, the horse that he brings forward this time. Had Barnahound Cornhill yesterday, scored 40.1. Now rides for owner Nicholas Pomeroy. It's an 11-year-old by Puissance out of a cruising mare. Who's represented Ireland at the very, very top of the sport, alongside wife Trish, who's in this field as well, have had so many years of success. Mike made his debut for Team Ireland at the Punchestown European Championships with the wonderful Old Road. Had a horse that took him to 3 Europeans and a World Equestrian Games in Aachen in 2006. Just had a slight miscommunication in that canter transition. Unfortunately, that will be expensive because changed in front and was late behind. But actually, the change came in the counter-canter movement as opposed to the flying change. So we'll see how the judges mark it, but unfortunately, not going to pick up big marks. And actually, they might not even give him marks for the flying change because essentially he didn't actually do one. In the movement, we'll see he gets 4s across the board for the counter-canter. And again, the same things happen. Now Mike has, he went to correct it. He was trying to pick up the counter-canter lead again and was going to put in the flying change, but actually just ran out of time. Some judges kinder than the others for the first flying change, 140. Unfortunately, the second flying change, 102. So that has caused their penalty scores to plummet further, unfortunately. Double marks for those flying changes as well, so both of those proving to be so expensive. But ultimately, in a test such as this, you know, if something doesn't go to plan, you've got to put it behind you. You move on very quickly to the next movement. Puff of the cheeks from Mike. So Mike back on track with picking up solid mark, 6.5s and 7s, but unfortunately, as we've said, that penalty score a lot harder to bring down as it is to go up. There's a light old breeze in Millstreet, but if you're wondering if all of those trees have been blown down, I think they've been strategically placed on their side, the majority of them anyway, as opposed to actually blown or knocked over. Just in case you wondered if there was a gale blowing in the background. Nice to enjoy some sunshine out of Enting. The Green Glens Arena of Millstreet, actually named after one of Noel C's favourite songs, Green Glens of Antrim. Noel C. Duggan, the original founder of Millstreet in terms of the Green Glens Arena. So Mike Bryan finishes his test with Claraa Mountain. And he might just squeeze a score back down towards the MER territory of 45. We'll watch this space. Just a handful of competitors left to go, some 7 in the lineup, or 6 I should say in the lineup. 3 for Ireland, 1 for Australia and 2 for New Zealand. Robbie Kearns, Kevin McNabb, Patrick Whelan, Tim Price, Ian Cassells and Clark Johnstone. All of them we have seen on their first horse already. Or, in Ian Cassells' case, on 3 horses already. I think Patrick Whelan's had a couple in as well. Most beautiful part of County Cork, Millstreet and Dressage Castle. The backdrop for the cross-country phase, which will be shown live for you on FEI.tv on Sunday morning, just across the road. And they have an unbelievably busy schedule. The Millstreet team, they've got classes from the intro 1-star level all the way up to a 4-star long format and everything in between. It's a logistical puzzle for sure. As next to come forward will be Robbie Kearns, and very dignified. Let's just remind ourselves of the leaderboard, though. Chris Burton, Shadowman, 25.1 out in front. Go Tosca and Andrew Barnett on 29.0. Felix Etzel, TSF Polartanz, 29.2 in third. So that's the podium at the moment. The Nations Cup riders all did their tests yesterday. So actually the team standings remaining totally unchanged today. And it looks like we're just going to have a momentary break. Don't have details on Robbie Kearns, very dignified, but we will have a short break, not coming forward for their dressage, and we'll be back with you for the next combination to come, which will be Kevin McNabb, Scuderia 1918, a best friend, in a few minutes' time. welcome back to the Dressage after that very short break. Kevin McNabb, Scuderia 1918, a best friend, is the next to come forwards. Kevin, who we've already seen on one occasion today with Faro Imp, comes forward with by far the more experienced of his horses. Faro Imp just stepping up to the level for the first time as an 8-year-old, whereas Scuderia 1918, a best friend, the horse that he actually rode here 12 months ago as part of the Australian team, securing a team ticket, I should say, for the Paris Olympic Games. Also been well placed at Po previously, 4th back in 2021. Missed the 2022 season through injury, but back competing this year, and actually does already have a Paris qualification under his belts with a 4-star long format in Montelibretti the back end of last year. Of Kevin's horses, Scuderia 1918, Donkey Dam, the horse that he rode at the Tokyo Olympic Games. This horse, very capable of putting in a very smart score in the first phase. Actually scored 26.2 en route to that 4th place finish at Po a couple of years ago. And certainly the early marks have been very encouraging. Admittedly, long way to go yet. McNabb's best ever test at the 4-star level, at this level, actually was a 23.6 that he scored here at Millstreet 12 months ago, in fact, with Willunga. Doesn't look like he's quite going to challenge that again today. But really nice, easy flying change. One of the only 9s that we've seen for his first medium trot. Now it's interesting because our camera angle here is just slightly off the centre line, so we don't get a true representation as to how square a halt is. But it was certainly a very nice halt. Picked up an 8 from Marie Hennessy, our judge at M. Australia holding the top 2 positions, remember, at the moment. Would be on track to hold the top 3 positions. Just worth remembering that both Chris Burson and Kevin McNabb, both competing as individuals, not in the Nations Cup team for Australia. And unfortunately, a break in that extended trot. Kevin did a good job then to get the extended trot back, because the transitions are marked separately, so he wanted to be able to show the transition coming out of the extended trot as well. But it'll be 4s across the board for the actual extended trot.
And your results from this is 22.2.
coming up the centre line to their final halt. Kevin McNabb and Scuderia 1918, a best friend. Eventually got a very square halt. And is going to be close enough to the top of the table, likely to go into 4th, I would imagine. 25.1 Chris Burton and Shadowman, Andrew Barnett, 29.0 with Go Tosca, and Felix Etzel, TSF Polartanz, 29.2 in 3rd at the moment. Kevin likely to just sneak into 4th place, 30.0. So that will see Australia holding 3 of the top 4 placings on the leaderboard. And it is a truly international top 10, in fact. We've admittedly got 2 Australian flags, a German flag, another Australian, Ireland, Great Britain, the USA, Japan, New Zealand, and then Ireland and New Zealand feature again. But Scuderia 1918, a best friend, Kevin McNabb, go into 4th on 30.0. So just 4 combinations left to come forward here. And Patrick Whelan will be the next of those. Aunty Lan in just a couple of moments' time. Also rides for Tim Price and Clark Johnstone. And Ian Cassell's the 4th of his 4 rides in this 4-Star Nations Cup presented by Connolly's Red Mills. Next to go, it is the turn of Patrick Whelan and Aunty Lan. Patrick already had a couple of rides. T2, his ride in the Nations Cup for Team Ireland, 36.0, currently sits just inside the top 30. And also had Pilltown OBOS, who scored 39.3 yesterday. So Aunty Lan comes forward having completed Cronenberg in the 4-star short format last year, actually completed Blenheim in the 4-star long format last year, lined up in this very class 12 months ago, did a 36.0 in the first phase on that occasion. Aunty Lan owned by Patrick Whelan himself. Dutch bred by Emilio. Been the smoothest, but he got his flying change. Didn't get the second. And the first, to be fair, slight difference of opinion from the 3 judges. Didn't really show a huge amount of immobility in the halts. The rein back up started almost immediately. All sort of offered it up. tension in that trot transition, but actually that trot transition has ridden much better today than it rode yesterday. We had a lot of horses breaking into a canter transition that was proving to be very expensive, not nearly as many of those in today's 2 sessions of dressage. Trending score of 37.1. Good enough to get him inside the top 40 at the moment. Just losing a little bit of balance on occasion and dropping behind the vertical. And unfortunately wasn't quite square behind. And it was a pretty quick halt as well. So Patrick Whelan and Aunty Lan. We'll get a score for them in just a second. Patrick, of course, wearing his white and purple ribbon in memory of Georgie Campbell. And the eventing community pulling together in Millstreet. We've seen lots of those white and purple ribbons, of course, representing Georgie's cross-country colours. And actually, British Eventing have led the eventing community in organising a 2-minute silence tomorrow, Saturday at 12 o'clock in whatever time zone you are in. So 12 o'clock in whatever your time zone, to take a couple of moments to reflect on Georgie's life and stand with the eventing community as a whole. And British Eventing have invited all of their members, all of their events to take part in this, but actually in real camaraderie from the eventing community. Rob Burke, CEO of the USEA, US Equestrian Association, has invited all US events and US members to do the same, and we would actually invite any member of the equestrian community as well. Do take those 2 minutes. The sport is an unbelievably close-knit one, and even those who perhaps didn't know Georgie have felt the ripple effect of grief this week, and we can all stand together. Tim Price is next to come forward. Another ride for Tim. We saw him yesterday with Chio 20 in the Nations Cup for Team New Zealand, and he now rides Drumgar Gold. This a horse owned by Michael McGrath, Irish bred, and won't be overly experienced, this horse at all. We'll double check if they've run at the level previously. Quite immobile in the halt, just the horse stepping back slightly. Drumgar Gold is indeed running at the level for the first time. Actually spent a good bit of time on the Spanish Sunshine Tour with the Prices earlier this year, but otherwise only 4 internationals under his belt. Jumped clear cross country inside the time at both Linier and Kililkey 3-star long formats last season, and just an 8-year-old, so stepping up to the level here. behind the vertical a little bit. Tim will be looking to get that nose up and out. And he was conservative in his request for the extended canter. Didn't quite pull off the cleanest of changes, but it was on the marker. One would imagine that very much a recent enough addition in establishing in this horse's training. Just got the legs in a little bit more of a muddle in the second of those changes. Tim gave him every chance. He sort of shaved some space off the corner, straightened him up at a slight angle to the short side of the arena. Tim very much looking to give this horse mileage at the level and a good experience in the arena as well. And Tim just wanting the horse to a little bit more up in front of him. Picking up some nicer marks in the trot work. Just showing it a little bit of inexperience in places. And in particular, Tim will just want to frame a little bit more uphill, pop the nose out in front. But actually, you can see the ingredients are there, certainly, for a really smart test in the future. And the horse did cope very well in the atmosphere that is there. So Drumgar Gold and Tim Price complete their first phase. And just 2 more combinations left to come forwards. 3 more combinations, should say, because we have one who moved from yesterday, Heather O'Connor, HSH Has It All, who was originally due to come forward yesterday, but actually was given permission to compete today due to exam pressures. So just a reminder, the top of the leaderboard, Chris Burton, Shadowman, 25.1, Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca, 29.0, Felix Etzel, TSF Polartanz, 29.2 in third. Kevin McNabb, Scuderia 1918, a best friend in 4th on a score of 30. Jennifer Coonley, Sammy Davis Jr. in 5th, 30.4. That is the top 5 as things stand at the moment. Just 3 more combinations left to come forward. The first of those is the 4th and final ride in this 4-star presented by Connolly's Red Mills. And he is in fact a Red Mills rider as well. It is Ian Cassells with Kelly's Quality. Ian, really busy week for him here this week. 4 horses, as I say, across this Nations Cup class. And actually, of those that he's had so far, Chambo Superflex, the most well placed inside the top 20, 34.8, just ahead of Milridge Athos, 35.2. Milridge Atlantis, his ride in the Nations Cup, 36.3. So now it is the turn of Kelly's Quality, an 11-year-old. Was bred by Francis Kelly, owned now by Patrick Murphy. Combination that actually went to Burnham Market a little bit earlier on this year, completed there. Wouldn't be overly experienced at the level, stepped up to the 4-star competition here 12 months ago, completed for a top 25 finish. Ian, who actually made his senior championship debut for the Irish team last year in Harada Pat with Woodend Farm Jack O.D. He's a very stylish rider, Ian. He sits very beautifully, gives his horses the best possible chance. Getting some really nice scores coming in as well.
Boy just completed the test in Arena 2. The next competition in Arena 2 for Great Britain, we got Fiona Harris riding Rockford Van den Lussenberg.
7s for the flying change. Very relaxed, easy test to watch so far. Second change wasn't as good as the first change. Short behind, but getting the rein back steps is always much more difficult if they haven't halted squarely. Because of course you want the legs to move back in diagonal pairs, and if they're not square, you're already on the back foot, so to speak. Really nice, easy extended trot. Score just dropped slightly, notably from the 5s across the board for the second of those changes. A little bit of crafty riding from Ian there, because just as he was out of sight of the judges, just gave the horse the rein with the outside rein and just gave him a little pat down the shoulder, just encouraging him to take it forward. Not quite square in the final halt, but otherwise a very nice test from Ian Cassels and Kelly's Quality. That will see them go into the top 15 for sure, and will actually be the best of Ian's 4 rides as well. 32.9, so just outside the top 10 into 11th for Ian Cassels and Kelly's Quality. So the leader at the moment remains Chris Burton and Shadowman, 25.1, Andrew Barnett and Go Tosca, 29.0, Felix Etzel, TSF Polartanz, 29.2 in 3rd. Next though, we have a ride for Clark Johnstone, and he comes forward with Damasco. It's a horse he owns himself. It's actually by Zoffany, an 11-year-old. Clark, who has been top 6 at both an Olympic Games and at badminton with the wonderful Balmoral Sensation. Has a really nice team of horses that he's campaigning, very much with a bid on a spot on the New Zealand team in Paris. This horse would be showing some really good form, but would not be one of those that is qualified for Paris yet. Menlo Park would be Clark's top ride. He will be heading to Le Moulin for the 4-star short. Damasco though, this horse 5th in a super competitive 4-star short in Marbach a few weeks ago. That was a class that was won by Astier Nicolas, Babylon de Gama, dominated by the French, Nicolas Touzon, Diable Morth and Greg Lacoste, Esprit de la Loge, rounding out the top 3. But Damasco, this horse finished ahead of Michael Young's Fisher Chipmunk FRH. A very tall, elegant rider. Behind in that change. Unfortunately offered up a change there, so Clark now has to get the counter back, and he doesn't do so. which means that actually he's not been able to show the flying change. So unfortunately, the judges will be pretty hard on that. Just a little bit of tension creeping in here. And a real variety in judging, in so much as, you know, variety in those marks. Everything from a 1 to an 8 in this test so far. Judges using the whole range of marks available to them. To take the contact forward. Does so with the second half of the there actually. So Clark Johnstone and Damasco finishing their test, not going to challenge the very top of the leaderboard. Those flying changes proving really costly for him, but still we'll look forward to seeing them in the jumping phases over the next couple of days. And of course, live on FEI.tv tomorrow from 2 o'clock, we will have coverage of the show jumping for you. And on Sunday morning, the on-site commentary team will be bringing you cross-country action out on Mike Etherington Smith's cross-country track, Dressage Castle. The backdrop for the cross-country phase here at Millstreet. .36.5 the score in for Clark Johnstone. He goes into 37th place at the moment. His first ride actually, Rocketman, sits at just inside the top 15 in 14th on a score of 33.5. So now the last rider in the first phase to come forward will be Heather O'Connor. Heather, who comes forward with HSH Has It All. It's the horse that she rode at the Young Rider European Championships in Montelibretti last year, finished in 12th place there. Also rode the horse at the previous 2 Young Rider Europeans also. Best placing was 9th in Sergio in 2021. But a horse that she's produced up the levels herself. Heather just out of young riders, now 22 years of age. It's the only horse that she competes. And a 4-star debut for them, so we wish them the very best of luck. Oh. HSH Has It All, just having a slight conversation with Heather into that canter transition. Really goes for the extended canter off the corner. She gets it back now. Flying change was lovely, but unfortunately about 6 strides too early. So hopefully the judges will be feeling kind and will still judge that as having completed the flying change movement, even though it was actually in the counter-canter section. And that's sometimes the danger when you really go for it in the extended. You've still got to think of what's coming next. And a clean change was a little bit extravagant from HSH Has It All. Settling into this extended walk. Just anticipating the trot transition slightly. Playing out in the background. The Green Glens Arena. Fun fact for you, hosted the 93 Eurovision Song Contest. I'm sure I'll drop that in a time or two throughout the weekend. There's not many equestrian facilities throughout the world that can make such claims. Red Mills, the presenting sponsor of this 4-star Nations Cup class, big supporters of Millstreet International Horse Trials, would also be big supporters of equestrian sport as a whole, within the eventing world in particular, supporting a number of riders actually that are competing here this weekend as well, the likes of Ian Cassell's in this class. Sam Watson has a ride in the 4-star long format as well. And into the final halt to bring 2 days of dressage to a conclusion, Heather O'Connor. HSH Has It All. HSH, the prefix of Hutchinson Sport Horses. Kelly Hutchinson, who is a master at highlighting wonderful young horses in the sport. The HSH prefix, probably most well known for that on HSH Blake of Caroline Pamuchkuz, who is the individual gold medalist from the Pan American Games last year. So 43.3 for Heather O'Connor, HSH Has It All, goes into 54th place. But that brings to a close 2 fantastic days of dressage here at Millstreet International Horse Trials. The lead individually is with Chris Burton and Shadowman, 25.1 ahead of and Go Tosca, 29.0. Felix Etzel for Germany, TSF Polartanz in third, 29.2. Then you've got Kevin McNabb, Scuderia, 1918, a best friend. Jennifer Cooley, Sammy Davis Jr in 5th. Stephen Heel, Kadam Deluxe, 30.7 for him, sees him in 6th. Alyssa Phillips and Oscar, best of the US combinations, 30.8 in 7th. Ryuzu Kitajima, Feroza Nieuwmoed, 31.6 in 8th. Caroline Powell, Legally Grey in 9th. And rounding out the top 10, Joseph Murphy and Calaro on the podium here 12 months ago, currently sitting in 10th, 32.5. In the team standings, they all did their test yesterday, so that has remained unchanged today. Australia 99.4, New Zealand 99.7 in the silver medal position, the USA 103.2 in third, then Great Britain and Ireland 105.0, 107.4 respectively. But that brings our coverage on FEI.tv of this Connolly's Red Mills 4-star class to a close, and we will be back live with you for 2 o'clock local time tomorrow. That is Saturday, for the show jumping and the next phase in this Nations Cup class. We would just remind you once again that we would welcome you to join members of the eventing community from all over the world in observing a 2-minute silence at 12 o'clock in whatever time zone you may be in tomorrow, in memory of Georgie Campbell. That's 12 o'clock tomorrow, but we'll be back at 2 o'clock local time for the next phase, the show jumping. We'll see you then.
Grass.